Thank you. I now call this regular meeting of the Board of Education to order at 7:01 p.m. We'll take a moment of silence to be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Have the coordinator call the roll.
Mr. Dixon?
Present.
Mr. Rollins?
Here.
Mr. Scrivano?
Here.
Mrs. McCulloch? Mr. Siegel?
Here.
Mr. Connor?
Here.
Ms. Stanford? With 7 present, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Before we go any further, I'd like to thank Connor and Rod, who are working behind the scenes to broadcast our meeting on Channel 20, Zoom, and YouTube Live. And as a friendly reminder to board members, staff, and the public, please make sure you keep your mask on and wear it properly over your mouth and nose when speaking. And I would ask that all board members, when speaking, speak close to the microphone so we can all hear you. So we are now at the petitions and communication portion of our meeting when we invite the public to make comments. The First Amendment of the United States Constitution guarantees the rights of citizens to petition their government as well as provide for freedom of speech. Also, the Illinois School Code requires that there be a time at regular and special meetings for public comment. Thus, we are following those mandates during this petitions and communications portion of our agenda. According to our board policy 2.230, the public comments portion is limited to 30 minutes. The board will not respond to comments at this time. If it's appropriate, you'll be contacted in a timely manner by staff in response to your questions. I think we only have one speaker tonight, so I'll have to read through all that. We have a clock on the wall to help you with your time. We thank you for your interest and your cooperation with our guidelines. So we have one speaker tonight, Mel Gillifen from Rockford Education Association.
Good evening, everybody. Like Ken said, I'm Mel Gilfillan. I'm the president of the REA, 20-year plus teaching veteran in Rockford. I'm here with Chad Anderson, our vice president, also a longtime Rockford teacher. Just here to address the board quickly. You may have heard a little dust up in the media recently. A lot of our people got their feathers ruffled and were upset by something that came out from the county, and they made their voices heard, and we're calling the REA office, and we responded. But what I'm really here to tell you about is what's going on in the schools. The good news is I've been able to visit 7 schools. Haven't been, walking around in the buildings and going into the classrooms, but kind of keeping my distance, watching arrivals, dismissals, some stuff in the hallways here and there. And what I see is I see people working very hard. Something I've heard come from several different places so far is basically a simple statement that everybody's a first-year teacher again, and it really holds true. You could have done your job for like me 25 years, and then this year you're reinvented with the technology, with the fact that you may be teaching face-to-face and remotely within the same week. Even some of our people, our self-contained teachers, are doing that in the same day. So basically what I'm here to say is our people are working very hard. I think they're going above and beyond. And I think that's why, we feel like our feathers got a little ruffled yesterday. And I think, reaching out to you guys and just letting you know that they're out there working very, very hard. I think we're giving a great effort. Many of them doing things that they never would have even thought, they would be doing at this point. If any of us could have predicted this, it would have been amazing. But once again, our teachers are doing what's right, and that's the point I wanted to make. I have not seen one teacher without a mask. I have been in the buildings, and the teachers have their classes following the rules and the plan that we set forth. The kids are wearing their masks. The teachers are asking them to comply. I see people nonstop on hand sanitizer, which is one of the big ones. Make sure that you're properly, taking care of business. The other thing is our teachers, just in passing and watching, nonstop with the spraying of the desks. And so the compliance phase, I wanted to make sure everybody knows our teachers are doing what's asked of them. And that's important. In no way, shape, or form are, we letting things slide or slack or, helping the spread of COVID in the buildings. That is in no way happening anywhere I've seen. I've also had conversations with Dr. Jarrett, who's been out, and we've shared similar stories. So just wanted to make that fact known to everyone, that our people really are doing what's asked of them, and not just doing what's asked, but going above and beyond to make sure the kids are safe and to make sure their colleagues are safe. So thank you, and I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Bill. Are there any board member comments at this time? Mr. Connor.
Yeah, one of the things I'll build on that the REA president said is I've been talking to a number of teachers and principals, and one of the things that I think might be a sleeper issue is that this is a difficult year for teachers for a couple reasons. One is that there's a lot of technology that they have not had to deal with like they do now. And to be truthful, last spring took us all by surprise, and to nobody's surprise, it was difficult. But I would say now, the fact that the teachers have been flexible, that they have actually gone out and learned a lot of new stuff. And let's not forget that a lot of teachers are balancing between remote and in person. So I really have to say the teachers especially need to be given a lot of credit for what they've learned and for their attitude. And the same with the rest of the staff that's out there, both in classroom and administrative. Everybody is really working hard, and I think as a public representative, it's heartening to see this is a hard situation and everybody's really pulling together. So I really want to thank really the entire staff of the district for really going above and beyond.
Mr. Siegel.
Thank you. I'm going to keep on. I received some emails from teachers that I was a little nervous about opening up their emails because prior emails were ones that were deeply concerning, but was very pleasantly surprised to find that the teachers are reporting this. One of them said this is the best year she's had. Seeing a lot of great connections being made with their students and students responding to the curriculum as it's presented. Another teacher talking about, there's a lot of work that's going into delivering education this way and feeling a little overwhelmed about some of the new things that are coming down the road. But she said, honestly, she sees silver linings and sees great potential in these programs that we're going to be working on, such as Win Wednesdays. The common thing I'm getting, regardless of how good or bad the feedback is, teachers are feeling pretty exhausted, and it sounds like the administrators in the buildings are too. But there is a sense of exhilaration about being back in school, doing the things that they've loved to do, that they've been trained to do. And I think it's very interesting to hear that comment that they're feeling like first-year teachers. There does seem to be an excitement about doing what they've done in a different way. And I'm just really pleased that they were willing to offer up that feedback. And I wish them continued luck, health, and success.
Anyone else? Ms. McCullough.
I'd like to use my couple minutes here as a teachable moment of sorts. Based on some phone calls I have received from...
Could I have you move a little closer to your microphone if you could?
Good.
Thank you. Okay. Okay.
How am I doing?
That's better. Okay.
Okay. This is, I'm going to read a quote that was written by a professor. Her name is Patricia Leary. And because I think it's powerful, and I think it's enlightening, and I think I'd just like to make this in response to some issues. We had a quote in the paper about a bulletin board that we had in the schools, and I want to tell you, I heard from both sides, you know, the Black Lives Matter and the All Lives Matter, and so I found this quote to be very illuminating and powerful, and I just would like to share it with you. The difference between focus and exclusion. Something matters. This does not imply nothing else does. If I say students matter, it doesn't imply that my colleagues, my friends, my board members, my family do not. There's something else that matters, context. Black Lives Matter movement arose in a context of evidence that they don't. People are receiving messages from the culture in which they live that their lives are less important than other lives. It's a cruel distortion of reality to scold them for not being inclusive enough. Thank you for letting me read that.
Anyone else? I would just like to add, Mel, that I have gotten numerous emails from parents thanking their teachers and telling me about how great their teachers are doing and how hard their teachers are working. So the parents are seeing a difference too. So please share that with your group too, okay? All right, if there are no more comments, we'll go ahead and move on to the consent items, which include the meeting minutes of September 8th, payroll, accounts payable, purchase orders, contracts under 10,000, the construction bid request logs for 9/8/20, the construction bid request logs for 9/22/20, the bid recommendations for tree maintenance, and the other consent items including the closed session meeting minutes release, the RPS work management work change order, the monthly cash and investment report for August 2020, and the Freedom of Information log. Is there a motion and a second to approve these consent items?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor,
Second.
second by Mr. Siegel. Are there any consent items that board members wish to have pulled for separate consideration? Mr. Rollins?
7A.
Okay. Any others? Okay, I'll have the coordinator call the roll on the consent items not pulled.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
Is that yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Allens?
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch? Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Stanford? The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. I'll now take a motion and a second to approve item 7A, which was the tree maintenance bid.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Rollins.
Second.
Second by Mr. Connor. Questions, comments, or discussion? Mr. Rollins.
So I don't have any questions. I just wanted to pull this and highlight it. When I first got on the board, there was a lot of discussion about trying to find efficiencies in the community by having different government bodies collaborate in purchasing. And this is an example of where I didn't know this was going on. I don't know what drove this, but it's an example of how we are at least still talking to other government agencies and looking for areas. And I guess I'd ask the administration to keep looking for those potential areas where we could be doing more of that.
Okay.
I want to give credit to Mrs. Yar, our CFO, who tirelessly was working with her team to look at this opportunity. I believe this was part of a collaborative work group that you've been a part of.
Yeah, the mayor put together a government efficiency work group, and so we've been working with it. There's a subcommittee where the Park District is involved, county, city, we're all on a committee, and we meet. We try to meet every week for a while, then now bi-weekly, and now we've kind of been busy. So we need to get back together, but this was one of the things that came out of that group. So, really great success.
Okay. Ms. McCullough.
When I pulled this up, the first thing my engineering people looked at was like, we get a way better deal on bigger trees. So, so we should be getting rid of.
Okay. I'll have the coordinator then call the roll on the approval of item 7A, the tree maintenance bid recommendation.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch? Yes. Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Stanford? Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Okay, we are now on to the closed session consent agenda items, including the following: the appointment of Talari Bazar as a 10-month assistant principal at Johnson Elementary. I apologize for butchering your name. Appointment of Jeremy Brown as a 10-month assistant principal at Jefferson. The appointment of Michael Spizak as a 12-month director of technology services. The appointment of Danny Eccles as a 12-month executive director of nutrition services. The request for student transfer, student AB. Notice to remedy for Matthew Fields, an HR organization report and addendum. And the closed session consent items, including student discipline for student number 2049. The student is expelled for the entire 2021 school year. And we had one EIA, student 8191. Is there a motion and a second to approve the closed session consent items?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor,
Second.
second by Mr. Siegel. Are there any closed session consent items that board members wish to have pulled for separate consideration? Seeing none, I'll have the coordinator then call the roll on the approval of the closed session consent items.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch? Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Stanford?
Yes.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Okay, we are now on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Jarrett.
Thank you, Mr. Scrivano. I just want to extend my appreciation to all of the hard work that has gone into starting the school year, faculty, staff, students, families. Great deal of sacrifice and effort has gone into that. Appreciative in particular for our school nurses and their partnership with the health department have worked very closely together, and we're going to continue to try to add resources to try to provide that support. I think there's a lot of people who are deeply committed to supporting our students in their respective roles. I also want to thank the board for your continued commitment to improve our communication through board governance. That 30 minutes we spent today, I think, was a nice preview of the good work that is to come, and I want to really shout out the extra work that went into committee chairs as well as chief staff liaisons to do that extra preparation. So thanks to our board for taking the lead in what I think will be a more engaging and proactive form of government moving forward. So thanks to the group for what I hope is the start of many, many great conversations to come. Thank you.
Okay, we have one action item tonight, and that is to action item 13A, which is the resolution to adopt the 2021 budget that Mrs. Yar presented at our last meeting. Is there a motion and a second to approve this item?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor, second by Mr. Rollins. Are there any questions or discussions? Mrs. Yar, I would just ask if you could hit a couple highlights for us. This is such an important thing. I want to spend a minute or two of having you hit some highlights of the deficit, how we're going to cover that, all that.
Mr. Scrivano,
Yep.
do you mind if I add to that?
Sure.
That there's a couple assumptions around evidence-based funding as a revenue source and CPPRT, and just some enumeration of the points you've made here so that from a public standpoint, it's clear what's going on with evidence-based funding and the CPPRT.
Sure. The story for this year's budget is the shortfall of our revenue. So it's really not on the expenditure side. COVID is additional expenditures, but the CARES Act money has covered, most of that, and the FEMA money. So the decrease in revenue, we came in with our flat evidence-based funding that happened in May. Our tax levy, of course, we've held that flat. Our CPPRT, which is the corporate personal and property replacement taxes, when businesses shut down and reduce their sales, then we are going to get cut there as well. So there's a 17% decrease in that revenue. When we started this budget process, we had a swing from our assumptions. Things were going really well in March before COVID, and things were looking good with our assumptions. They were accurate assumptions for what was going on then. But there was a dive of $20 million from those original assumptions. Of course, we had some increases in there built in because of what our projections had been over the last few years. But with, COVID, it really impacted everything on our revenue side. Our interest also with the feds, taking down that interest rate significantly, our interest revenue also went down $2 million. So it's a revenue story. That's where our revenue decreased. So that brings us to a reserve spend. We were not able to cover all of that revenue shortfall, so our reserve spend is $9.3 million. We will take that out of our fund balance, which is our rainy day fund. If you want to look at it that way, our savings account, we will take it out of there. We are in a strong fund balance position to do this for 1 year, but as we look forward, we will need to try to find some cost savings and try to cover this going forward, because we can do it for 1 year. Another year is not going to be feasible to do that. So we will be working hard over this next few months and looking at any other cost savings. But we did do some things that were cost saving measures in this process, and we have changed our assumptions many times to get as fine-tuned as we can with what's going on. But we will have a $9 million reserve spend.
Yeah, there were just a couple of things I wanted to highlight, and I said this before, since we're taking action on it again, I'll say it again. I don't lightly approve a deficit budget. In fact, I think I've strongly objected to deficit budgets in the past. I think these are unusual circumstances. We do have our rainy day fund, which is adequate, and the other thing I used to point out back in the day when we had to point things like this out is if you look at things on a 2-year basis, on an average basis, we look like we're projecting an $11 million surplus for the fiscal year that just ended. And so over a 2-year period, we're really pretty flat. And, I've been through enough of these budget cycles to know that strange things happen with revenue and expenditures, and sometimes that just happens. So, I'm not concerned about a 1-year deficit budget, but I do appreciate the emphasis on looking for ways to reduce the deficit during the year and make sure that we don't, because I'll assure you, if we do a multi-year deficit budget, you will hear from me. The other thing that I wanted to just point out, if you go to slide 13 first, which is our property tax rate trend. So Mr. Scrivano and I got on the board in 2011, and you will see that we have finally, after 9 years of trying, gotten our property tax rate back down to about where it was when he and I got on the board. And if you want to see the reason for that, go back to the previous slide, which is slide 12, and it's an inverse curve, and that's our EAV. So our EAV dropped significantly after 2011 because of the Great Recession. There's a lag. There's always a lag because the EAV is based on a retrospective 3-year rolling average. But it has taken us, and we're not even quite there yet, but 9 years later, property values in the district have finally recovered to close to what they were before the recession. And all I can say is I really hope that what's going on now doesn't throw us into another recession and that we just start the whole thing all over again. But because if we can keep that trend going upwards, and if we can continue to hold the line on our property, on our levies, we can hopefully even make more progress in reducing that property tax rate even more.
Mr. Scrivano, can I just highlight one thing?
Absolutely.
Mr. Rollins, and there have been so many board members that have contributed to this work. Basically, everybody on this board has done at least multiple years, in some cases 5 or 6 years. So I think the board as a whole deserves great credit for holding the line on the levy for 8 years. So thank you to all of you, as well as our financial team. And there have been a lot of people that have worked hard to do that. But I just want to point out, in real terms, the rate peaked at $7.94 if you round up, and it's looking like it's going to be down to $6.55 from 2015 to the proposed 2020 levy. That is about a 17.5% decrease in the rate, if you look at it in terms of a percentage increase. That is what happens when a board shows the kind of sustained fiscal discipline that this board has showed over multiple iterations. We are now on the fourth different board that I've had the opportunity to work with that has shared this common vision. And what we're seeing is a rapid acceleration in property value increases as a result of that fiscal discipline that this board has shown. And that is not because we don't need the money. That is not a situation where we could not use the dollars, but this is the kind of partnership that I'm truly proud to be part of as the superintendent, and honored to serve with a board that has seen this kind of work through over a very long period of time in many fiscal cycles where it would have been easy to say, let's just take the levy this year. It has also had a cumulative partnership effect on multiple other taxing bodies that we partner with that have shared this commitment. So not only has it impacted taxpayers with our 17.5% contribution to the tax rate going down, but there has been a ripple effect with other taxing bodies like the city, like the Park District, that have also shared that same sacrifice over this time period. So it's not often we can take a bow over taxes. And I do want to highlight, and it may be increasingly difficult to do so as financial pressures hit, but this has been a true team effort and a sustained run of real excellence in government efficiency over almost a decade. So congratulations to the board, and I think the taxpayers and the property values are demonstrating that this kind of sustained strategy matters.
Michelle, I just wanted to ask you, any thoughts on where you think evidence-based funding is going to go in the future?
I don't think anyone knows right now, but I am going to do some scenarios where it's flat for 22. So, I mean, I'm doing multi-year right now, and those will continue to change as we know additional information. But with the state's situation and how this is lasting longer than what most people thought, I would, we really don't know. I mean, we'll just have to continue to monitor that.
I guess I'm concerned that, the districts in the state of Illinois that have the higher percentage of poverty are going to be hurt more than others would be, because evidence-based funding was supposed to fix that.
Yeah, it definitely was. I mean, under general state aid, we were getting increases, and now we were flat. So it's difficult. It would be difficult to do that for another year.
Dr. Jarrett, do you want to?
This was a 10-year commitment made with good intentions, and we were only in year 3 of that 10-year commitment. The idea was to do $3.5 billion because we were funded at 61% adequacy. That 3-year commitment got us to about 62% adequacy. And so there is still a long, long way to go for evidence-based funding. I know that I was meeting with LUDA superintendents, and I believe it will be our intention of the 53 largest K-12 districts in the state to recommend that $350 million increase. But we are also doing that in the context where there is a reality of a projected $5 to $6 billion state budget deficit. So these are going to be extremely challenging times, and our political advocacy is going to be important, but we're also going to need to see some kind of significant relief probably from the federal government to have any shot at the state coming close to a balanced budget. So these are going to be challenging times for sure in the next multiple budget cycles. And Mrs. Yar and I and the board and our whole team will work together to plan through those contingencies. A lot of time in Mr. Rollins' planning committee for sure.
Any other comments? I'll have the coordinator then call the roll on the approval of action item 13A, which is the adoption of the 2021 budget.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Stanford?
Yes.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Okay. We are now on to board member or administrative action steps. The only one that I wrote down was that we, the board, need to review the presentation that Dr. Jarrett sent us on the CEO-centric goals, and so we can discuss that in closed session next time. So make sure you put that on your list of to-do. Anything else to be added? If not, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor,
Second.
second by Mr. Siegel. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned at 7:31.